Welcome everyone to this month's Community of Practice. We're very excited to have Veronica Thronson here again with us, and she's going to talk to us about when a parent is detained using the ICE Parental Directive in family court. And I'm going to be assisting her when she'd like me to. This event is sponsored by the Office on Violence Against Women. And the opinions, conclusions, recommendations you hear today will be either Veronica's or mine or any of our participants, and don't necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Justice Office on Violence Against Women. Veronica's going to be referring today to a number of materials, and I've asked Isabella to put links to those materials in the chat. What we're actually going to do is put a link to the location that we keep the recordings of all and the materials related to this community of practice. And she'll include the passcode if you don't have it handy to get in. But that way, if you want to pull up the materials that Veronica's talking as we go through, you'll be able to access them from our community of practice webpage. Next slide, please. So I'm going to turn it over to Veronica.
Hey, thank you, Leslie, and good afternoon, everyone. As Leslie said, my name is Veronica Thronson, and I direct the Immigration Clinic at Michigan State University College of Law in East Lansing. So today we're going to cover the ICE Parental Directive, and we have this outline of an agenda to make sure that you see where we're going with the presentation today. One of the things that is important to remind everyone is that this parental directive is very, very important, particularly for family law attorneys who are representing immigrant clients. It is very useful. It was updated during this administration in the summer of last year, so it is up to date and it actually works. And so as we cover it, I'm happy to answer any questions. Either you can unmute yourself or write it in a chat, and I will make sure to respond to any questions you may have as we move forward. But one of the things that I wanted to do prior to getting into the parental directive is to give you a couple of statistics. Everybody's listening to the news or watching the news and hearing that ICE is in many of our immigrant communities and they are actually detaining a lot of people. That is true. They are detaining people. The immigration judges have been deporting a lot of people as well. And many of these immigrants who had been detained have not had access to an attorney. It is very difficult and expensive to find an immigration attorney, particularly when someone is detained and the attorney has to act as in an emergency basis. So it is very, very hard. So I wanted to give you the latest updates on the states where most detainees are being sent to. So we have Texas as the main one, and then Louisiana, California, Florida, and Georgia. So it's basically people are being detained and moved to different locations based on capacity. So I'm sure you have heard that this administration was targeting Somalians from Minnesota, and a lot of them, including parents with children, were sent to Texas. So even though attorneys have been successful in getting their clients released, people are not being sent back to the state where they were living, and so they are just being released in the state where they were transferred, which is very important when we are having this conversation about the parental directive, because people need to be able to use it before they get moved. Once they get transferred, it's very difficult to ensure that your clients are going to be participating in person in any family proceedings. So the only way they will be participating in the family process will be remotely. And so that's very hard for people to do when they are detained. And the idea with the parental directive is for you to know that parents have rights to us that they are able to participate in any proceeding that is happening that is affecting children. Not everybody qualifies to use the parental directive, and so I'm going to cover that to tell you who are the people who qualify to take advantage of the parental directive. Another thing that has been in the news as well is the use of expedited removal. And the reason why I'm spending a couple of minutes covering this is because a lot of parents who are being detained had been detained based on expedited removal. And that means if people are not able to prove that they had been in the United States for 2 years or more, the government is entitled to pick them up and send them back home, like expeditiously remove them without having the ability to appear before a judge to determine if they qualify for relief. And so if they are being sent home, the only way that they can prevent the issue of expedited removal is if they express a fear of being sent back. And so it is important that you know that people still have the right to express their fear of being sent home, but they have to act quickly to make sure that they don't get sent to either their country of origin or another country. So it is important, right, for people to know that they have these rights. And we, as attorneys, we have been debating, do we tell people to carry documents showing that they had been here 2 years? But then if we encourage them to have these documents with them, they are already showing the government that they are in the United States without lawful status, right? And so it is basically a balance to try to figure out how do we do this? How is it that we are able to protect parents in particular when we have no idea where ICE is going to be with operations? Like in Michigan, for example, a couple of weeks ago, ICE picked up a few parents who were waiting at the bus stop to get their kids from the bus coming from school, and a lot of parents got picked up. And so, we definitely don't want to be telling people to be scared and not to leave their house, because people have to continue to live their life and, take care of their children. And so we thought that by doing this presentation and giving you information on the parental directive, you at least have the tools and you can inform yourself, so you can inform your clients of the rights they have when it comes to ICE trying to enforce detention and deportation. So how do parents get at risk of being detained? Leslie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I
Okay,
just
go
wanted to
ahead.
say something, just back a slide on the 2-year piece. So people have found some creative ways to prove 2 years without getting into the question of immigration status. So for example, some people are getting notes from their doctors that say, this is a medication, this person has been my patient for 5 years, I've been serving them. If anybody needs to know something happens to them, they need to take this medication regularly. So something like that doesn't say what they are status-wise or not, it could be something that proves 2 years without getting into immigration status. So you want to think creatively, especially if you're working with clients who've been here, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, what they might be able to have with them that could help show they're not subject to expedited removal.
Thank you. And we have people who had been here decades, right? And it's just so hard to try to explain to them, you should be carrying these documents, but not these documents, right? And so
Right.
it is hard, but it's basically a strategy, right? And every client is going to be different. If your client already has, I don't know, a VAWA petition pending, a U visa case pending, why not carry those receipts with them, right? To show that they have something and when is it that the government received it. And, if it's a U visa, chances are it's pending for many years, right? But at least they have something to show that they are on their way to regularizing their immigration status.
And I'll just add, if they're walking around with evidence of filing VAWA T or U, it triggers, in addition to the parental interest directive, the parental detained parent directive that we're talking about now, it triggers all the VAWA confidentiality protections that we've had lots of sessions on. So that's good to know too.
Yes, thank you. So we have a list here of parents who are at risk of being detained. Obviously, given that the government has gotten rid of the sensitive locations memo and other protections, right? Anybody is up for grabs, basically. But people who should be particularly concerned are people who may have a prior order of deportation, people who are drinking and driving, people who engage in domestic violence, people who are driving without a license, failure to register, right? You know that there is a new provision in the law that requires people to register, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Failure to change your address, right? People don't know that they must change their address, even if they are lawful permanent residents. Workplace rates, right? Like, how can you prevent a workplace rate? And so people.
Veronica,
Yeah.
you're muted.
I don't know why they muted me, but can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, right, okay. So workplace rates, the less than 2 years in the United States, because you would be subject to expedited removal, in the Lake and Riley Act. I also want to cover that a little bit, just to give you a sense of how people are getting detained. So failure to register, right? The administration came with a whole list of people who are already registered. So you may be wanting to talk to your client and see if your client has already registered and doesn't need to do that additional requirement. And the attorneys are not able to register their own clients. People have to do it themselves. So you'll have access to the slides, but here's a list of people who are already registered and people who are not registered, right? Anybody who entered the United States unlawfully, for example, by crossing the southern border, chances are they are not registered, right? And there is a requirement that people register, but what do you do if you don't register? Right? Or then what do you do if you register? Like, the government it's going to have your information. They are going to have your client's address. They are going to have your client's personal information that could put them at risk of being detained and deported. But also, if they don't register, they could face the risk of not, or of being sent home because they didn't register. So it's again, right, it's a balancing that you need to have with your clients and try to see the pros and cons of registering or not complying with the law. And I tell my clients, I cannot tell you to violate the law, right? Like that, I can't risk my license. But these are the choices you have. These are the options you have. And then people have to make those difficult decisions. Another thing with the Lake and Riley Act is basically people who had been accused, not even people who had been convicted or sentenced for a crime. It's actually people who are accused of theft, burglary, assaulting a law enforcement officer, or any other crime that results in death or serious bodily injury. And so that's pretty broad, right? Like, your client is, I don't know, buying diapers at Walmart, and a security officer could say, oh, I think you are stealing the diapers, right? You are being accused of a crime, right? You are being accused of a theft, and that could actually put your client in mandatory federal detention. And so it's very, very important that people know, right? Like, we have this, like, not guilty, and, you are presumed innocent, but not with the Lake and Riley Act, that you have people who are being accused of a crime being mandated to be detained. So that's important to know. So what are the risks for being detained, right? Definitely interaction with law enforcement agencies. There are many communities that have the 287G agreements with local law enforcement and ICE. So you should be aware in the community where you are, like who, what counties are having these collaborations with ICE. The rescission of the priorities, right? Like I talked about earlier, the rescission of the sensitive locations directive, right? Like anything is up for grabs. There have been incidences where people are saying they don't want to go to a hospital because they are afraid ICE is going to be there. There are nurses and doctors writing letters saying you cannot come and do your enforcement in the hospitals. But, it's the federal government, right? And they have a lot of resources to have people all over the place and creating fear in the community. So, people absolutely should seek medical assistance and contact the police if they are victims of a crime, and making sure, right, that your clients have a strong advocate who can help them go through this process, because it is pretty scary for many of our communities right now. So another thing too, and if you are not an immigration attorney, but you are working, representing people in family cases, make sure that you partner or reach out to an immigration attorney to see if they can do an intake and try to explore options for your clients who may be here undocumented, right? Like maybe they qualify for asylum, maybe they were a victim of a crime, maybe they are a victim of trafficking, right? Like New App has great technical assistance where you send an email and then we have someone reach out to you and help you explore other options for your clients. That's important, right? Like now is the time to be thinking, how can we help our clients? Maybe they qualify for a family petition, right? Maybe they have an adult US citizen who can petition for them. So it is important to continue to explore options for people. Yes, Leslie, thank you.
No problem. Thank you. I just wanted to say that, and if somebody is going to file, let's say for a VAWA, a T, or a U, SIJ, all of us are working with crime victims, domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, stalking, all of that. Then the person could register at the same time they file the VAWA T or U, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that's one thing to think about, that if somebody's going to be filing, or if they've already filed, registering on top of that, because VAWA confidentiality applies to the entire immigration file of a victim who's filed a VAWA T or U. So that registration gets VAWA T or U protection if it's a victim that qualifies for one of those three. So it's important to understand that.
And you may have a lot of clients who qualify, right? And there are people who say, no, I don't think I do, or, oh, it's going to take too long. No, even if it's going to take too long, make sure that you are helping them, because then they have that additional protection with VAWA confidentiality.
Right.
So getting information on a case, right? I think most of you may know, but the government usually issues a receipt. It's taking a while to get receipts for VAWAs, Ts, Us, and special immigrant juvenile, but it is important for people to know once they have that receipt to keep track of the cases, although the Ts, the Us, and the VAWAs are confidential, so you are not able to go online and get the receipt and see what's going on with the case. If you have a client who is detained, there is the online detainee locator. It usually takes a little bit of time for the person to be put in the system, but it is important for people to know. Now they are asking for the A number, but if you don't have that A file, like the file number that the government gives your clients, just with basic biographical information like date of birth and country of origin and name, they are able to try to locate where their client may be. And so it is important that you know all of this information to help your clients navigate the system. Yes, Leslie.
Yeah, so 2 points on the detainee locator system that I think is important. So first of all, for those of you that are not immigration lawyers and those of us come out of the family law world, we're used to having different court files for different kinds of cases. That doesn't happen in immigration. So if you have a client, let's say they already had an A file because they filed an asylum case, or they might have a prior case of some kind, maybe the abuser filed for them and withdrew, or whatever the story is, they might have an A number even before they file. So just know that it is, if they have some other number, it's the same number that they're going to end up with the VAWA T or U using the same number, right, Veronica?
Yes, it is. And usually starts with the letter A for alien, and then it's 9 numbers, right? A lot of them, a lot of people have very old cases. And so if you only see 8 numbers, it's usually a 0 before, right after the A. And so when you go to the EOIR, to the Executive Office of Immigration Review to figure out if your client is being put in removal proceedings, you need that number to find out, right? And then it can tell you, this is, your client was ordered deported in Miami in 2014. Maybe your client doesn't know because the client didn't know that she had a hearing and then didn't show up, and then she has an order of deportation already in the system, right? All of those things are very important to know because you're going to have to disclose and then counsel your client a different way if you know that this client now has a prior order of removal that could make her more a target, like put her more at risk of being detained.
And the other thing about the detainee locator system that's important, I think this is still in place, Veronica, there's an opt-out for battered immigrants. So for victims who get picked up, because otherwise their perpetrators could use the system to find them too. So if you have a client who, if they get picked up, is going to opt out, you need to do safety planning with them about how they can be found if they're picked up.
Yes, they do still have the opt-out option for people, and that is absolutely true. Thank you for reminding me. I always forget to mention that.
I helped
Thank you.
draft it decades ago. I keep forgetting, is it still there? Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is there and actually very useful for people. So we definitely don't mean to scare you with this presentation, like giving you all the bad news, but I think preparation is important, right? And as family attorneys and advocates, you should be having these conversations with clients, right? So how do you prepare them? It is important that they have all of their information in order, right? Just in the event that something may happen, that they could get picked up, like something where the parents don't know where the documents are, or someone is not able to pick up the children from school. All this like worst case scenario, right? Like now is the time to be preparing your clients. And I know a lot of nonprofits have been helping people. It has nothing to do with immigration, right? Like it's your family law hat that you're wearing, trying to help people with guardianship, with custody cases, right? Like anything that, a power of attorney, right? Like what documents are parents going to be needing to be able to give temporary custody to someone else in case they get picked up. And so, as Leslie was talking before about the documentation of presence in the US for 2 years or more, that is important so your client is not subject to expedited removal. But then again, right, like you need to be cautious with what documents your client is going to be carrying. If they already have lawful permanent residence, if they already have that green card, they are required by law to carry it, not a photocopy, right? Not a picture on their phone. They are required to have that physical card with them. A lot of people say, I don't want to lose it. Well, keep a couple of copies at home, but you should be carrying those documents with you so you can show the government that you are here with status. Absolutely no fake documents, right? Like that is very important too. There are people who work under an assumed identity, or they bought a birth certificate from someone else, or whatever the case may be, right? Like they should not be presenting any false documents to the government in particular, and they shouldn't be carrying those documents with them. Another thing too is that they should be having photocopies of all the documents, right? It's important for them to make sure that someone else can find the documents at home. So all of those, legal advice that we give people, right? And, if you ask me, right, like my daughter is 24 already, right? So I wouldn't need to have any power of attorney, but before when she was little, like we had all of these documents thinking, what if something happens to us, right? Like we need to make sure that someone has copies or knows where those documents are. The caregiver plan for children and dependents, right? And actually, ICE, in one of the documents that we are sharing with you, has ICE prepared this pretty complete, pretty, how do you say that? Okay, I'm drawing a blank, but comprehensive list of what forms people need and by state. So you have all 50 states and you have the links to all the forms that people need to be able to do this parental, help, right? Like to make sure that they have this power of attorney, that they have the guardianship or the custody documents in case they get detained. So you'll get a lot of information, and I'm giving credit to ICE because they have really worked, and I'm pretty sure with Leslie working behind the scenes, right, making sure that people have their rights protected and making sure that people have access to those documents that are going to be helpful later on.
Yeah,
Another thing, yeah, go ahead.
just one other thing to add. It's also important if you're working with clients, you might be working with a VAWA client that years ago filed and now they're a naturalized citizen. Naturalized citizens should get passport cards and carry them with them as well, because it's a level of protection that would be useful. So it's something to think about as well. I advise everybody to do that.
Yeah, I carry my passport card with me.
I do too.
Yeah, and I have an enhanced driver license. I carry that obviously, right, to drive, but I also have that passport card. Like it costs a little bit more when you get your passport, but it is actually good. You're not carrying that bigger document, right? Like you're carrying that card, which it helps you as an ID as well. It helps your clients. So how do people choose a caregiver, right? And I know these are difficult conversations that people have to have. We just did one, even though it's in my clinic is immigration, but a mom wanted to give, the documents and give the power to their adult daughter. And the adult daughter has DACA. So it is a temporary status that she has, but at least she has more than her parents have, right? And then we help her prepare the documents for the little ones that in case the parents get detained. And so it is important, right, to choose someone who is going to be someone who knows the child, right? And maybe the child already has a relationship with that person, someone who may actually help with travel arrangements in case the parent gets deported and she wants her child with her. And so it should be very important to make sure that people choose the right person, right? Here in Michigan, a lot of parents are even having the teachers help them and be the person who's going to be the emergency contact in case something happens to that parent. So obviously, if that person you're trying to give power to has a CPS case, right? Like that's not going to be good, or that person is also undocumented and could face removal, that's not going to be the right person for your client, right? Like you need to have someone who's going to be able to help in case of an emergency. Another thing that is important too is that parents cannot delegate a power they don't have. So what do I mean by that? Let's say my husband and I have custody, right? We are married, we have a little one. Let's say the court already gave me custody and because he doesn't have a visitation. He cannot go and give guardianship to someone else over our child because he has no custody to give, right? And so it is important, especially when parents are not married to each other. In most jurisdictions, I would say the mom is the one who has custody, right? Like we can always show who is the mom, but it takes a little bit more to show who the dad is. So mom has custody of that child, right? When they are married, both parents are treated equally. And so it is important to make sure that people understand the relationship they have to the children, right? And that they are not able to override a court order. If a court already ordered my husband to have no contact with my child, he cannot just say, oh, yes, I'm going to ignore the order and then give custody to this other person, right? Like it is important that people understand the basics of family law when it comes to custody and guardianship over the children. Okay. So what rights do people have in the event of being detained? So absolutely they have a right to visitation, right? And every detention center is going to have a little bit of different rules, right? There are detention centers where they don't allow children under age 14. There are detention centers where they only allow a virtual visit and not in-person visit. If they allow in-person visits, make sure that the clients know that it may take at least 3 hours to get into the detention facility. And so, and even for attorneys, so I did a lot of detained work when I was at State College. And I knew I was going to spend my whole afternoon going through security, trying to make sure that they reviewed all the papers, that the client was going to be available, that I wasn't there when they were having lunch, right? So you need to make sure that your clients know when the visitation schedule is. And if parents have children who are undocumented, those children should not be coming to visit the parents, right? Because those children could be at risk of being detained as well. And so it is important that people understand that the fact that they are detained doesn't mean that anybody can come visit them, right? Like anybody who is not lawfully present in the United States should not be coming to the detention center because they could actually get picked up. Another thing, right? The parental directive is only going to be applying to parents and to legal guardians. And so this is important, right? Who is the primary custodian of the kids? If I'm a deadbeat dad who doesn't have contact with the children, I am not going to qualify as a covered individual, right? Like I don't have custody of the children. So I cannot say, oh, you cannot deport me because I'm taking care of the kids, because I'm not. Right, but if there is an ongoing case pending in family court, then absolutely I have the right to engage and be part of the process. And that's important. And I wanted Leslie to talk a little bit about the Nebraska case, if you don't mind. I think
Sure,
that's a very important case that gave rise to more rights for people who are detained.
Yeah, so there was a case, it was Maria Luisa, and she had two children, both US citizens born here. Though it's a very long story, but she ended up going to the hospital for treatment of her youngest daughter, and they gave her the wrong interpreter. They gave her a Spanish-speaking interpreter when she spoke Quiche. And that started a series of events because she thought they said, take these pills. If the child gets better, then you don't have to bring her back. But what they said was, if you don't come back, we'll turn you in. And she didn't come back because her daughter got better. And then they sent police after her. Police turned her into ICE. She lost, there was a termination of parental rights proceedings that she couldn't participate in from detention, and ended up being deported to Guatemala, and tried to do the parenting plan in the child welfare case from Guatemala. Long story short, her parental rights were terminated, but she got a great MALDEF attorney who eventually got a pro bono counsel, and we ended up with a unanimous decision from the Nebraska Supreme Court that basically says that detained, undocumented, or deported parents have the same constitutional rights to care and control of their children as everybody else does. And those children have the same rights to be with their parents. So it's really good decision that basically says it's not about the status of the parent, and the status of the parent isn't a factor in considering whether somebody has maltreated their child. So it's really, there's some very good language. I'll put the link in the chat. And it was, as I said, it was a unanimous decision from the Nebraska Supreme Court. It has some great language that's helpful in custody cases as well, because it talks about like how important it is to be with your natural parent, as opposed to the court speculating on whether they think this child will be better off in Guatemala with mom or have a better life if they're placed with foster parents or adopted parents in the US. So it's a really, really good case.
Thank you, Leslie. And it is important, right? As we see more parents who are being detained, as we see children who are being detained, right? I'm sure you saw the little kid with the, rabbit hat. It's important, right, to know that regardless of immigration status, you have that constitutional right as a parent. And you are the one who decides, right? Like if I'm being deported, if I want to take my child with me, I am going to take that child with me, right? And so it is important that people know that their rights are not going to be terminated because they got deported, right? They have that constitutional right to be with their children. And in many instances, we end up thinking, right? I usually say, it's better to have a child reunite with mom than getting that child that green card, right? Like that's what I would want someone to do for me if I were in that situation. Yes, Leslie?
And I just wanted to add, and the punchline to this whole story is that it was Maria Luisa's case that led to the first parental interest directive, because ICE realized that they had done the wrong thing, not serve her with papers, didn't give her an opportunity to appear, wouldn't take her to court. So all of these things, even in today's iteration, come from that case and work that I think it might have even been the Bush administration did to try to make sure this doesn't happen again, which is why there's ability to visit, why parents under the directive are supposed to be placed near where their kids are, things like that. And
yes, and with this slide, right, like you are, the parental directive allows for that parent who is detained to appear in family court proceedings, right? And so, in many instances, if they are not able to transport the parent, they can still do video, right? They can still try to help them to make sure that they are going to be attending that hearing, even if it's a telephonic appearance, but it is important. But ICE won't know unless you tell them, right? Like, how are they going to know that there is a case pending or that this person is the main care provider for a 2-year-old, right? Like, they don't know. They pick you up and they don't know. And so it is important that clients know that there is this parental directive that they can use in the event of getting picked up by ICE.
And what's also, let me just add one other thing. What's also important is that's why getting custody and protection orders, getting temporary custody orders, getting anything that says there's an open court case around custody or guardianship or something of that child and this parent is a document that could make a difference in these cases.
And so ICE is going to want to know that there's something going on, right? So they have a whole list of what evidence can you present to show that there is an ongoing case, like an order of protection, like Leslie said, or a custody case, right? Like if they have a notice from the court saying you are required to appear at this hearing, right? That's enough to show that there is a case that is pending. Another other papers that they want to see is that, have you been ordered to work on a parenting plan, right? And because you are detained, you're not able to comply, like what happens with Maria, with the case that Leslie just spoke about, right? So it is important, if a judge has ordered visitation, if a judge has ordered paternity or a DNA testing, all of those things are important for ICE to know that they have to comply by using the parental directive to provide the rights to this person who is detained. So how do you do that? Right? Like, how is ICE going to know? So ideally, your client should have documentation that shows, right? Look, I have a hearing schedule. I'm carrying that in my purse, right? I want to have a copy. I want to have a copy of the order of protection I applied for and the hearing that is coming up to determine if my order of protection gets extended. How do I contact ICE? So they actually have, their website is very good, and we have here, we have the link. They have a coordinator who deals with all of these issues, who is aware and who is trained in making sure that parents are given the rights on the directive. And also, if you have clients who may be at risk of being detained, you can have them sign a waiver for you to communicate with ICE. And here's the link for the form as well, right? Because if I call ICE, unless they know that I'm the attorney, they are not going to be giving me any information. But if my client has signed this privacy waiver, then I'm able to communicate and I'm able to give ICE information.
And that's really important because all of us, many of us on this call are family lawyers. So you don't want to, you're not going to enter a G28 because you're not their immigration lawyer, right? So for them to know that they can communicate with you as that person's family lawyer, you would need to use this kind of a form.
Yeah, so here's the list of the documents that you are going to have in the link that we have here from NewApp. And there is also a fact sheet for child welfare and guardianship, people who are working for child welfare like CPS or guardianship. That's an excellent document that the government put together. The parents in ICE custody and minor children, right? The designation of parental authority, they have so much information that is very useful right now. The National Detainee Handbook is the one I was telling you that has the information and the different statutes by state. So if your client is in Alabama, right, like what forms are going to be needed because they have the information. They actually have information on the different consulates. So if your client is detained in Texas, like what is the nearest consulate? And it's important to have that relationship with the consulates too, because if the clients are being deported, in many instances, there are consulates that may help with money to send the kids to reunite with a parent back home. So it is important that people are aware that we have all of these resources. And some of it is long, some, like the fact sheet is just a fact sheet, right? The parental directive is not that long, but there are documents that are longer, but you can just tab them, right? And know, okay, in Maryland, this is where I can go. This is where my client can go to make sure that people are aware that this directive exists that could help facilitate visitation with a parent when the parent is detained. The fact that they are detained doesn't mean that all their rights are suspended, right? Like they can still exercise their rights and participate in any custody proceeding that they may have related to the children. So, okay, so here we have the technical assistance and training, and also the library that has incredible materials, right? Like I always tell people you should spend, half an hour just poking through the library of new app, and you'll be amazed to see the wealth of information that Leslie and her staff have put together. Um, I think I'm done with my presentation. We have a next community of practice next month on March 24th. And I think we can open it up for questions. If people have any questions, feel free to unmute or to type on the chat.
Yeah. And I think, Susan Pearlstein, if you've got things you want to add in terms of some of your own experiences, please feel free to join in now. Same thing with Patricia and anybody, any of you.
Oh, thanks, Leslie. Hi, everyone. I missed the very beginning, so sorry about that. I don't have much to add except Veronica, did you go over passport stuff, like getting the children's passport?
No, I did not cover that. And that is important, right? If the child is a US citizen, Leslie mentioned getting the passport card. But if your client has US citizen children, make sure you apply for a US passport for them, because how else are you going to prove that your child is a US citizen? If your child is foreign born, definitely make sure that you are contacting the consulates to make sure you make an appointment and get them a passport as well. ICE, in the event that someone is getting deported, ICE also facilitates with the consulates to make sure they get a travel document for people. It's no longer an excuse to say, I don't have a passport, you cannot deport me. Right, like ICE works with the consulates to get those travel documents to effectuate the deportation of foreign nationals. The same with children, right? Like they do the same, but it is important. In many instances, I mean, for American passports, right, both parents have to go with the child. If a parent is detained, or if a parent is not in the picture because of custody proceedings, there are ways in which you can get your passport without both parents signing. And they don't even require an American ID. I did one recently where he had a voter registration ID from Mexico that hadn't expired, and then we did an affidavit, and the State Department issued the passport for the children. Client single mom, but that wasn't the picture, and so he didn't want to go because he was afraid he would get picked up. But we did it using his voter registration ID, and we had been successful in getting the passports for the kids.
Yeah, I'll just add that sometimes it's really helpful to get them obviously beforehand, but say a parent or a caregiver who is at risk of being deported or detained would want the child to go back to the home country. And maybe the child's a dual citizen or American citizen, they might, if they hadn't gotten the passport ahead of time, like Veronica was saying, it can be hard to do it without the parents. But they might have to go through the whole custody process or file some other way. And then also just think about having someone have authority to travel with the child if that's what they want. If the caregiver or parent would want the child returned to the home country, they're going to need a way for the child to travel. So they would, in some of the paperwork that we have prepared for people to look at as samples or forms, one of the things that we include is a delegation of authority to travel with a child. And, we can't guarantee that'll work every time, but it's helpful, I think.
Yeah, especially given the age of the child, right? There are many children who are too little for the airlines to say, sure, this kid can travel without an adult. And so it is important too. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us of that.
So can I just say, there's a couple of parts of this parental directive that I really do want to also draw attention to. The Detained Parent Directive. So I guess it's section 5. Let me find it again. Here we go. So basically what it says is that if a covered individual. So a parent with that's a custodial parent has a minor child, or there's a family court child welfare guardianship proceeding in the area of AOR, the area of responsibility of the ICE. So within that ICE age, where they get picked up, that ICE office will have an area of responsibility. They're supposed to place that parent within the area of responsibility of that ICE office and not transfer them to Texas or Louisiana or whatever. If they say, I'm a custodial parent, I'm involved in a court case, I have to be in court on such and such a day. So that's 5.3 of the directive, and I believe the directive is part of the materials. If not, we'll make sure it is.
Yeah.
And then it says they have to maintain that person within the custody of that jurisdiction, close to where their kids in the court is. And if they don't, they're supposed to, make the closest possible placement or return them to the place they were picked up. And the problem is what Veronica was talking about is the importance of being able to show that they're a custodial parent immediately and not be afraid to do so is really important, but it's going to take good advocacy and good lawyering from all of us, because otherwise they're going to ship them as far away as possible, potentially. So it's just important to know that that is part of this directive. This is the July 25 one.
So someone wrote on the chat that it's not what's happening on the ground, and I actually believe you, right? Like it's actually, so much easier to say, oh, this is it. But they have contacts for people who have complaints over ICE not complying with the directive. And maybe it is because they aren't really training ICE officers, because they are hiring very fast without giving them enough training. But it is important for people to know that they have those rights. So if the stuff is not happening, right, they can elevate. And there is the manual, the directive has information on who to contact if ICE is violating the directive.
So that's the issue, is to arm your clients with as much as you can. File the VAWA to your use so they get VAWA confidentiality protection. Have evidence that isn't, that doesn't compromise them in an immigration perspective of being there longer than 2 years, and encourage your clients to say that they are a custodial parent. Because that's what makes this operate. And that if people are silent and don't do any of that, you're right. It's not going to work. So that's the key, is that that's why we're doing this training, is we need all of you to be aware so that your clients will say that they're custodial parents. It may not work, but it might. And then you'll have more to work your way up the chain of command. Because it's going to take advocacy to work we're all going to need to step up and work our way up in the chain of command and follow directives to make this stuff work. It's not going to work automatically.
Unfortunately.
I have a question or comment. I just was looking at the Pennsylvania one that they have in the ICE delegation of parental authority packet. And it's really kind of not accurate because it uses standby guardianship. And that's really very specific for different types of situations, which does not include immigration in Pennsylvania. Just thought I'd mention that.
Okay, thank you.
So you should all take a look at the sections on your state and look at it, make sure it'll really work under your law. And if it doesn't, then come up with something that will.
And I'm sure they would be open to updating, right? The same way they updated it in July of last year. If there is information that is not correct, right? Like they have to know, because, otherwise it doesn't work, right? And, maybe they had, I don't know, maybe they really didn't go deep into all of the different family situations in different states.
Mm-hmm. Right. And if you guys are, trying to connect with them to update information about your state and you're having problems, please do call New App, and between, you know, me and Veronica and Susan and Trish and others, we can jump on it and try to get through to these folks and get them to make the change. Or at least put in a formal request.
Exactly, exactly.
Other questions for Veronica while we have her here? Other thoughts? And I'll just say to you, like, it takes work in this day and age to make this stuff work for our clients, but we need to know and we need to be prepared to to take those extra steps and, you know, to try and make it work. Caitlin?
Yes, good afternoon. I have posted this question in the chat, but I'm wondering if y'all have any information or resources, or if there's similar guidance for folks who may be in CBP custody. I'm on the border and I've had real life experiences where clients get picked up, you know, a day or two before the hearing, and they spend all that time in CBP custody before being transferred to ICE. And so I'm wondering if there's any kind of guidance out there on that.
Hmm.
I
I am not familiar with that, but I'm pretty sure because it is the CBP custody is supposed to be temporary, right? Maybe that's why they don't have those provisions, but that's something we can definitely figure out and get back with you.
Right, and what's interesting is when you look at some of the other directives that, so how would I put this? When you read the January 2025 directives about victims, about VAWA, about courthouse enforcement, there are places in those directives they talk about the field office, and so the special agent in charge. If you ever see that in an ICE document, ICE doesn't have special agents in charge, only CBP does. So some of these probably could apply to both, but we can look into it and find out. It might be very interesting, actually, Veronica, as an experiment, to call the ICE community relations field or the team of parental interest, try to get a call with them and ask them what they're like, how they're coordinating with CBP on this directive. Because I'm sure what Caitlin's talking about in border states is not uncommon.
Yeah, I just did a quick search and I found the family unity policy, but it hasn't been updated since May of 2024.
Exactly. So they
So
together and they split them. And when you look at the January 25 ICE policies, it's just weird because in some places they talk not only about the field office and the field office director, they talk about the special agent in charge. And so I wonder, which is why it might be worth asking. So Nupur, let's put that on our to-do list and try to get back to everybody.
Sure.
yeah,
Any other questions? Great question, Caitlin. Thank you. Anybody else?
so someone asked, wondering if you do training for shelter on know your rights and how to keep undocumented immigrant clients safe. Yes.
Yes, we do. We've been doing a lot of those actually for individual shelter programs, for statewide coalitions, depending on the state. So we absolutely do that. And when you're talking about shelters and transitional housing that are domestic violence programs, they have protections that are we have a set of materials that we've done training on that we can include. We'll add them. We should add the letters and the video connection to the letters to this webinar, you know, to where we put the materials for this webinar for everyone, because in those materials, there's a letter that basically says, "Dear ICE agents, this is a domestic violence shelter. Here are a copy of your processes and procedures that say that you're essentially not supposed to be doing immigration enforcement at this location, and that explain to you that I can't admit or deny that any of these people are here because of main VAWA." But we've done a lot of training on that. We can do it individually. And we can, in the meantime, get you the materials and you can call us for TA.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you. So I just want to thank Veronica and for your wealth of knowledge and information as usual. We really appreciate sharing. I hope this has been useful to all of you. Thank you all for joining us. Do not hesitate to call us with more questions and technical assistance. And thank you, as always, Brianne, for making this whole platform run and facilitating these great conversations. It's
Yeah,
great to
and there's
see.
a survey link in the chat if anyone would like to fill out a survey to help us evaluate our presentation as well.
Thank you, Isabella.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
And do fill out the evaluation.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.